G'day punters, Wagering Angles video for Friday, January 12, ahead of a good card at Flemington tomorrow. So we've been everywhere recently, Geelong, Cranbourne, Ballarat, Moonee Valley. We've had a lot of rain on race day and stuff like that, but moving to a good series of races at Flemington, Caulfield and Sandown, so I'm looking forward to that. Just quickly touching on Geelong last week. Starting in race 5, that was the race we had 3 hard in the market: Carbonados, Trapeze Warrior and Get Along. As I suspected, Trapeze Warrior was heavily supported late to run favourite at $3, while Carbonados drifted from $2.20 out to better than $5 on Betfair. I had a question from a subscriber about whether that was a betting drift that you could bet into, similar to what I discussed on last week's video about Dunkell at Moonee Valley. In this case, it was more difficult. This was a horse with limited exposure that didn't parade particularly well, got very hot in the yard. So certainly he got out to an attractive enough price that you could chop out on him, but it's one where it's difficult to bet with any real intent. But certainly a dramatic shift in that market. And obviously, Carbonados set out to the lead and won well in the end. However, his job was made easier by the fact that both Trapeze Warrior and Get Along pulled up lame, so that took some interest out of the race itself, but that's what happens. Race 6 last week, the all too familiar situation we see these days where a horse goes up fairly tight like Ray McNerio, is heavily supported. Always looked the winner in the run, but in the end, he's only won by sort of a head or a neck, and 5 horses are finished within a length there, so hard to justify the odds-on price, but it's the way of the world these days. Race 7 was the betting sort of went in the direction I expected, with Baldunio eventually running favourite. Brunkin came out and ran at Warrnambool on Sunday and got the job done on a heavy track in a small field. And in the end, there was support for a lot of runners here, and Lafargue just showed his liking for Geelong and got the job done. So not much else to say. Race 8 was a really interesting betting race with Holy Man's well supported, which indicated that he was going to return back to that Flemington rating. And he got the job done, beating Bermudez, who ran really well and justified his position as second favourite in the market. And the surprisingly good run in that race was Don't Doubt Dory. So, I mean, he might be able to win a race this prep. And the other runner I just wanted to mention there was Mystery Island. He was racing completely out of his grade, and he's got more wins in him on firm ground when placed in his own grade. Race 9, again, similar to the Ray McNerio situation with Varvia. I mean, she was backable in the morning. She was around 320, but she just firmed all day to eventually run 215. The market didn't like any of the resumers, so as they disappeared from the market, Varvia just kept getting firmer. Wave Rider Boy held her place, but didn't perform, so Varvia was able to assert dominance over that field. So that's about all for Geelong. Let's move on to Flemington tomorrow. I'll just quickly touch on race 3. Otago is a promising horse. He trialled really well before winning at Bendigo, where he put a hole in 2 nice horses that have both won impressively since. So he's got a bit of a tendency to want to get his head on the side and lay in a little, but I think it's more of seems like a habit than something he's feeling. So that'll probably disappear. And I mean, he's the only horse I went looking for in this race. I'd really like to be backing him, but the market's tight, and I don't think they're going to want to let punters on, really. He looks like running an odds-on favourite. Let's move over to race 5. It's some interesting wagering angles here. The current market has Girls at 290, Bold Soul and Interlinked at 390. So there's 2 form lines here to assess. Interlinked come off his maiden at Kilmore straight to the city and beat older horses over 1600. I mean, that's a strong indicator. He pays a small weight penalty here, and he is stepping from 1600 to 2000. Bold Soul ran favourite, I think, at Caulfield over 1800 in the same race as Girls. Bold Soul had the run of the race, and Girls got past him comfortably late from well back. The Interlink race looks stronger to me, but the other two have got the distance range run advantage. The early price assessors put Girls shut very short here, and she has eased, and I'm thinking this is heading for a three-way battle for favouritism. At probably around that $3.80 to $4 mark. I can't really see. I certainly can't see Girls sustaining a dominant position. I think she has to ease to meet the other two. Bold Soul could drift a little bit because he was a bit weak late there, but he maps well, and he did run favourite there at Caulfield. And as I said, Interlinked, it seems to me that even though he pays the weight penalty, he's got the stronger form, and I just think he's the obvious alternative, and there are aspects of the market that are going to gravitate to him. So it'd be interesting to see how it pans out. The only other runner I want to mention there is Sam Bookers. He was scratched from the 1800 metre race at Caulfield, and I would have been inclined to back him there. He would have been on the quick backup. So now he's had a bit of a gap between runs. But he ran quite fast time at Yarra Valley. I mean, he doesn't have the credentials of the other three, but I think he could run a cheeky race at good odds. Let's go over to race 7. It's a big field, quite an open race. There are two runners here that are lightly raced that received some support as soon as the first market went up in Greenbelt and Punch Lane. So Greenbelt's off a very long spell. That's a horse they've obviously had issues with. And Punch Lane's just had the one run back in a pretty soft race where he won easily. They've both got credentials, but seem well found to me. So I went looking for value in this race. My feeling is both Punch Lane and Greenbelt will probably drift later in the betting to run north of $4, but I could be wrong there. Just depends on how strong the stables feel about those horses. Helix is a clear alternative here, finally getting himself back on track over the course and distance. You know, he's set himself a fitness platform there to be fancied in this race. Vagrant's only got one run to hang her hat on, but it was a good win at Caulfield, and I suspect she can reproduce that rating, and if the market thinks she can reproduce that rating, she will firm, I would think. And there are other runners in this race that could get some specking. Explosive Thinker was inexplicably poor last start at Caulfield. But if people can find a reason to forgive him, he could be backed. Too Good for Turex only had one previous first up run for Matt Laurie, and he won comfortably. And he's trialled nicely. I think $23 seems a big price for him, and he could receive some support. And Intrepid Eagle did something there at Moonee Valley last start. There'll be punters interested in Intrepid Eagle for sure. Bubby Lass's in form, so she's not out of the question either. So I just think there's a spread of money there, and I just think the two favourites will just gradually drift as the percentage comes out of the market. Race 9's a very interesting betting race. We've got Miracle Spin coming down from Sydney off a good second up 1600 metre win in a race that was set up nicely for him with the pressure on, the tempo strong. And he gets a completely different setup here with, you know, no, on paper, a soft tempo with Piaggio, the likely leader. So, I mean, I wanted to try and see if I could get rid of Miracle Spin, but as I went through it, he did have a couple of, there was one 2,000 metre run of soft tempo against Faulkner Park that, you know, he's only got to do something like that to be hard in the finish here. So I can't get rid of him. I'm just hoping that he'll drift to a backable price at some stage of the betting. I thought Ton of Grit had something to offer here. He's got a history of sprinting hard late off soft tempos. This 1600's a new trip for him, but soft tempo brings him right into play. I don't necessarily think he's not an obvious target for the market, but he seems reasonable value at 550. If you can just ignore, I suppose you can easily ignore what happened to Piaggio last start. He's the map horse here, so I could, you know, there's a case for him to be targeted. So yeah, it's a very interesting betting race. So good card at Flemington tomorrow, punters. As I said, it's good to be getting back on a series of meetings at Flemington, Caulfield and Sandown, and let's hope we can make good use of it. Cheers, punters.